Krishna 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 Hey. Jai Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopijanna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Gopijanna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopijanna Vallabha Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Gopijanna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Shri Shri Radha Madhava, enjoying loving pastimes on the bank of the river Jamuna ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramhamsa Vyajakacharya Stadhatara Satya Shri Srimad Divine Grace Shri Lacey Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramhamsa Vyajakacharya Astotara Satya Shri Srimad Divine Grace Shri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Devamrita Samaniti Namane Prachari Purvarakshamcha Bhakta Charmavinata Parartha Tapikanunyam Yasasai Vejtanama Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the King of Books, the Grantaraj, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the topmost Vaishnava literature, and I would dare say the topmost literature anywhere. Every syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam is saturated with Krishna prema. We just need to refine our spiritual palate so that we can taste the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna in every page of Srimad Bhagavatam. Fortunately, we have as our connoisseur of Krishna consciousness, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, who's helping us to understand and to dive deep into the nectar. So we're in the 7th canto, chapter 5, Prahlad Maharaj, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu, which sounds like an oxymoron, but that's what happened. We're at text number 6. Shri Narada Uvacha Shrutva Putra Giro Daityaha Parapaksha Samahitaha Jahasa Budhir Balanam Vidyate Parabuddhibihi. Shrutva Putra Giro Daityaha Parapaksha Samahitaha Jahasa Budhir Balanam Vidyate Parabuddhibihi. Shrutva Putra Giro Daitya Parapaksha Samahita Jahasa Budhir Balanam Vidyate Parabuddhibihi. Would you, Prabhus, like to chant? Any devotees want to chant the verse too?
Sri Narada Uvacha Shurva Putra Giro Daitya Parapaksha Samahitaha Jahasa Budhir Balanam Vidyate Parabuddhibihi.
Thank you, Prabhu. All right, word for... Oh, go ahead.
Sri Narada Vacha. Probably got an echo. Shrutva Putra Giro Daitya Parapaksha Samahitaha Jahasa Budhir Balanam Vidyate Parabuddhibihi.
Jai, thank you, Prabhus. Word for word translation says, Sri Narada Uvacha, Narada Muni said, Shrutva, hearing, Putra Giraha, the instructive words of his son. Most parents do not want to hear instructions from their children. What to speak of Hiranyakashipu. Daitya Hiranyakashipu. Parapaksha, well, Daitya of course means the demons in general, being the children of Diti. Daitya, Diti. Parapaksha, on the side of the enemy. Samahitaha, full of faith. Jahasa, laughed. Buddhi, the intelligence. Balanam, of small boys. Bhidyate, is polluted. Para buddhibhi, by instructions from the enemy's camp. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Narada Muni continued, when Prahlad Maharaj spoke about the path of self-realization in devotional service, thus being faithful to the camp of his father's enemies, Hiranyakashipu, the king of the demons, heard Prahlad's words, and he laughingly said, this is the intelligence of children, spoiled by the words of the enemy. Purport. Hiranyakashipu, being a demon, would always consider Lord Vishnu and his devotees to be his enemies. Therefore, the word parapaksha, on the side of the enemy, is used here. Hiranyakashipu never agreed with the words of Vishnu or Krishna. Rather, he was angered by the intelligence of a Vaishnava. Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna says, Sarvadharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam raja. Give up all other duties and surrender unto me. But demons like Hiranyakashipu never agree to this. Therefore Krishna says, Namam dushkritano mudha prapadyante naradamaha mayaya pahrita jnana asuram bhavam ashitaha. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. The asura bhava, the atheistic nature, is directly represented by Hiranyakashipu. Such persons, being mudha and naradama, fools and rascals, the lowest of men, would never accept Vishnu as the supreme and surrender to him. Hiranyakashipu naturally became increasingly angry that his son Prahlad was being influenced by the camp of the enemies. He therefore asked that saintly persons like Narada not be allowed within the residential quarters of his son, for otherwise Prahlad would be further spoiled by Vaishnava instructions. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cham Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cham He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Mrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanja Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavinibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai. By the grace of Srila Prabhupada, we derive brilliant insight into eternal and essential truths about life, and more importantly, eternal and essential truths about Krishna consciousness. So it seems that even in the time of Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu, the battle over children's education was still going on. And our modern fights over how children should be educated is just following in the same thread. Nowadays, of course, the real battleground for politics in America is actually the public school, which is really embarrassing and really sad, because children are the future, children are the world, and differing camps of ideologies see children as the fodder for their cannons by which they attack what they consider to be people opposed to them. Of course, as humans grow old, their perspectives of life become solidified. They don't really change much, no matter how much debate is going on in the public forum. People generally don't change. And so if you want to make your idea more widespread, if you want to, recruit new members to your camp, then you have to do it amongst those who are young and impressionable. Enter the public school in America. That's where so much of the politics go down. What can and can't be taught to children in school? What are you allowed to say? What are you not allowed to say? What should the curriculum be? And it's a mess, really. As a parent of school-age children, I looked at that environment and found it wanting for civility and consistency. And I've taken the path that many have done recently with homeschooling, which has increased exponentially, especially since COVID began. And not just for religious communities, but lots and lots of parents are just deciding they don't want to throw their children into this battleground of the public school. The same thing's happening with Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad. Prahlad is speaking about the path of self-realization and devotional service. And his father, Hiranyakashipu, is saying his intelligence has been spoiled by the words of the enemy. That's exactly how modern parents are talking about their school-age children and what is being taught there. Hiranyakashipu, of course, is an atheistic demon, and so his outlook on life is simple and myopic. It's just us and them. This is really symptomatic of the atheists and the asuras, the demons. Very simple perspective of life, us and them. It's not sophisticated. It's not refined. It does not accommodate, a variety of circumstances and situations. The atheistic position is philosophically naive and sentimental. And so he simply sees my camp and the enemy, and that's it. That's all there really is to it. And so we should learn from this, to not become similarly naive like Hiranyakashipu, and to see that anyone who's different from me is therefore my enemy. If Hiranyakashipu were a bit more sensitive, a bit more philosophical, he might consider that there's wisdom to be found from any tradition. And whoever speaks anything, even if they speak something very contrary to my own perspective, still they deserve as much respect as any human gets on the base level. But Hiranyakashipu is just very simple. What Prahlad is saying is opposed to my own thoughts on the subject, and so therefore he's been poisoned by the enemy. It's that simple. Much like modern parents who don't want to accept that their own children have their own will, their own volition, their own identity, their own freedom to pursue what they like. Similarly, Hiranyakashipu doesn't want to recognize that it's his own son who's choosing to become a Vaishnava but rather he wants to blame somebody else. This is also very symptomatic of the atheists and the demons. Always just want to blame somebody else. Modern parents also, instead of just accepting that their children have their own free will to take up, some lifestyle or some type of identification or whatever, modern parents want to blame somebody else. It's the school system's fault. It's the media's fault. It's Disney. It's the government. It's somebody. It's anybody but me, the parent. Of course, it's everybody else's fault. So there's a lot of little Hiranyakashipus out there in the world right now. They might not have the same power and influence as the original, but the mentality is hardly changed. Hardly changed. And so we derive from this section of Srimad Bhagavatam valuable insight into how to navigate this modern world as well. At least we should see that it is not very smart to be like Hiranyakashipu. So simple and crude in his outlook that when he hears some very good advice from his son, he thinks someone has poisoned his mind. There is some enemy here. My enemy's camp has somehow caused this. Let us not be so simple and naive, which our modern American politics, at least on the federal level, is just 100% indulging in. That's how it continues. The politics of spite. The engineers of the American government system, whether it's the lizard people or someone else, they have perfectly arranged that the American public is split right down the middle. And they've perfectly engineered so that we see every single problem as caused by the other side. Non-stop, all the time. This is all you hear. Anything that goes wrong, well, it's because of the Democrats. It's because of the Republicans. It's because of the other camp. Every single thing that's wrong. Now, this is perfect social engineering. Perfect social engineering. Perhaps that's why Hiranyakashipu acted in this way, because he engineered his own dominion over the universe, brief though it was. Because that's the best way to do it, right? United we stand, divided we fall. Well, we fell a long time ago, at least on the American political scene. We fell a long time ago, because when one indulges in the politics of spite and sees that every problem is caused by my enemy's camp, this is perfect social engineering for those at the top of the dog pile. And this is the naive outlook, the naive sentimental outlook of the demons, basically. And that's why it's become so prominent today, because demoniac forces are gaining some influence, as is often the case, and especially during the Kali Yuga. So we should see there's a lot of little Hiranyakashipus running around. There's much of this atheistic, demoniac mentality going around, and we should do better. We should do like Prahlad, of course. Prahlad, remarkably, despite being harassed by his own father, he still did not see that his father is in some separate camp. This is symptomatic of the Vaishnava. This is symptomatic of any great devotee of the Lord who comes to see that all living beings are part of the Supreme. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita. It's a symptom of genuine spiritual progress. In chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, I think text number 35, right after Tadvidi Pranipatena, then what Krishna says is something really amazing. And what he says is, I'm going to tell you, dear devotees, he says, Yaj gyatva na punar moham evam yasyasi pandava. Yena bhutanya sheshani drakshasi atmanyato mayi. Drakshasi atmanyato mayi. He says, if you've really learned from a spiritual master, just like Prahlad has learned from Narada, what is the first symptom? What is the first symptom of really inquiring from the spiritual master? Pariprashnena, really rendering service to the spiritual master, sevaya, and really surrendering to the spiritual master, pranipatena. What is the real symptom of that? Krishna says, when you've attained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never again fall into such illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme. Or in other words, that they are mine. So the contrast between the demoniac and the devotional is quite simple. The demoniac always sees us and them, or I should say us versus them. The demoniac always sees that every problem in my life is caused by my enemy. And this is perfect social engineering by whatever demoniac forces are involved in that. And in contrast, the devotee sees all living entities are part of the Supreme. All of them, brothers and sisters of the Lord. Even Prahlad sees in that way to his own father, who's just the worst. It's remarkable, the difference between the two of them. So, considering the options laid before us, let us identify with Prahlad Maharaj's outlook on life, with Prahlad Maharaj's devotion, his equanimity, and his equality of seeing all living entities as part of the Supreme. So much so that even after this whole ordeal is finished, even after all the blood is spilled and the bodies are dragged away, and Prahlad is praying to Lord Nrsingadev, he prays only for the deliverance of his father. Isn't that incredible? He doesn't ask for anything else. Nrsingadev is offering him Nrsingadev offers him the same thing that his father had, dominion over the universe. Prahlad only prays, just please deliver my father. This is Vaishnava. So remarkable, so astonishing, and so contrary to the demoniac atheistic nature. How fortunate are we to even hear the slightest bit about Prahlad Maharaj. Our good fortune is immeasurable. How fortunate are we to have this boy Prahlad as our role model. They should be making posters of Prahlad to put on the walls of young kids these days, to make this the role model, the real role model of society. Just so superlative in every way. Hare Krishna. But this verse is not so much about Prahlad, it's about Hiranyakashipu. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is dissecting the nature of the atheistic demons. We should know that there is no profound atheistic philosophy. There's really nothing there. There's no substance. I've never heard an atheistic philosophy in my few years of trying to network with newer people and to introduce them to Krishna consciousness. I've heard a lot of ideas, and I've never heard philosophy of atheism, interestingly enough. Despite the idea that we have that atheism is spreading everywhere, really there isn't much of it at all. And statistics show this, actually, that although there's less religious adherence, particularly in countries like America and France, there's less people who are card-carrying members of this church or that temple. That doesn't actually mean that there's more atheism. The section of society that is not committed to some particular religion, who are not adherents, are still, by and large, spiritual or theistic in some way, but just find themselves unable to or unwilling to commit to any particular type of practice or orthodoxy. So there's really just not a whole lot of atheism, because it's just not a very good idea. At the end of the day, it's not very intelligent. You know, if there's no entity that knows everything, then there's nobody that knows if there's God or not. It's just the logic is not there in any way. What does exist is entirely sentimental. A frustration with the hypocrisy of religious practitioners, a very simplistic aversion to authority, or just a sort of social pressure owing to, what conflicts are perceived between different ideologies. So people just kind of are afraid to wade into that. And so just become non-committal, tepid spiritualists. And almost entirely, that's what you meet when you get out there on the street and try to preach Krishna consciousness. Almost entirely. There's just this sort of tepid, like sort of comatose spirituality in everybody. And I could count on one hand the number of out atheists that I've met preaching over the last 20-something years. There isn't much. Most people have a sort of dormant, tepid, comatose spirituality that they want to find a way to express. Because atheism just isn't profound in the slightest. There's really nothing going on there, except a sort of naive rejection of any type of authority. Now, what's really important is that naturally many people are averse to and intimidated by committing to some spiritual practice, some religious practice. But what we should recognize is that this position is not enlightened. It is not superior to non-committal, to non-committance. Committance must be the noun, right? Commitment, non-commitment. You think I would know which one is the noun and which one is the verb. Anyway, so there's nothing really profound or sophisticated about non-commitment. In fact, it's the non-commitment that's even more problematic than the commitment. Many people are afraid to, adhere and apply themselves to a tradition or a practice. And they're thinking that if I do, there might be so many problems. There might be some challenges. There might be some hypocrisy. There might be some conflict. But actually, the position of non-commitment is even more problematic and challenging and full of conflict. And Krishna illustrates this in Bhagavad Gita as well, in chapter 16, I believe, where he says, Yash shastra vidim utsrija, right? Vartate kamakartaha. Na sasidim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. Right? I think it's in chapter 16, where he wants to make clear, and we should try to remember, and therefore feel some sympathy for those who are in that category of, timid about committing to some practice. Where Krishna says that one who rejects scriptural authority, ye shastra vidim utsrija, like, I don't want to follow some rules, the vidi of any scripture, shastra. Vartate kama karta, and therefore their actions, karta, are just very whimsical desire. Well, I guess I'll just do whatever I want at any particular moment. Now, Krishna says about these people, na sasiddhim, they don't attain perfection. Na param gatim, they don't attain the supreme destination. And these persons, they might even admit, well, yeah, I'm going to recognize that I won't become purified if I don't follow some practice, and I might not realize God or attain the supreme destination, at least anytime soon. So, yeah, okay, well, so what? But then Krishna says, nasukam. Actually, you can't even have any happiness without Shastra Vidi. And I think this is the part this is really where the rubber meets the road in trying to preach Krishna consciousness or to help others to progress in their devotional life, whether it be in bhakti or anything else. Where the rubber meets the road is where you actually cannot have happiness without some Shastra Vidi, without some boundary, without some rules and regulations that directs you towards the ultimate goal, which helps to refine the palette of spiritual pleasure and happiness. And this is the part where people really are frustrated, because owing to some aversion, for whatever reason, to a religious practice, They avow themselves instead to kamakarta, whimsical fancy, just whimsical sense gratification, and yet find themselves repeatedly frustrated, not attaining the happiness that they want. This you hear all the time. Whenever we're preaching, whenever we're having some discussion or some Bhagavad Gita class, like last night, a few guys are here, even though it's the Thanksgiving break. Everyone agrees that despite their attempt to just whimsically enjoy anything, still they find themselves lacking, their hearts completely unsatisfied. And Krishna is saying this, na shastran vidim utsrija, vartate kamakarta, nas siddhim, I forgot it now. Anyway, he says, na sukam, actually there isn't any happiness. There cannot be happiness without those boundaries which guide ones toward refined pleasure. This is very apparent for those who have children. When you're raising children, you have to give them healthy boundaries. You don't just let a kid do whatever they want. A parent knows, no, superior pleasure comes from being healthy, physically and emotionally, from being responsible, interacting with society as a contributing member. That's where the superior happiness comes from. And so parents give boundaries to children to coerce them towards that superior, sophisticated pleasure. So similarly for all of humanity, the Shastra Vidim, those rules and regulations in the scripture, which some persons have a knee-jerk aversion to, is actually the guide towards superior pleasure. And that's how we should pitch it. That's how we should preach it. And then people are interested. In contrast, demons like Hiranyakashipu, thinking themselves the supreme authority, really being atheistic, are actually very rare. You don't really meet many people like that anymore these days. But we can see from the example of Hiranyakashipu that attitude, although it sounds impressive, is very short-lived. And in the case of Hiranyakashipu, quite literally short-lived. Because he was so fortunate to have a son like Prahlad who became the impetus for his deliverance at the razor-sharp nails of the Adbhuta Shringam, the most wonderful form of the Lord, Nrsingadev. He got his guts ripped out. So real atheists are short-lived. They pretty much always shoot themselves in the foot at some point, or get their guts ripped out. So, in conclusion, let us consider the incredible contrast between Prahlad and his father. The atheistic, demoniac mentality is to always see us versus them, the politics of spite. Every problem in my life is caused by my enemy. That's the very simple, philosophically naive perspective of atheists and demons. It's infantile, really. It's intellectually infantile. Hiranyakashipu might be very powerful, but intellectually infant. Whereas his infant son might be a mere child with no physical power, and yet he's an intellectual powerhouse and a devotional magnet. Just absolutely incredible, because he sees that there is not an enemy. Even my own father is so dear to me that he prays to Lord Nrsingadev for his deliverance only. That was his only request from the Lord, who is Varada Rishab, the best of the givers of benedictions. He only prayed for the deliverance of his father. So, the devotional mentality, the devotional perspective is obviously superior in every single way. And it is our natural inclination, remarkably. And I'll finish with this last point. This sort of secular, non-theistic society that we see in the modern Western world is really a new experiment, and it's not a natural one. It's one that needs to be trained. And that's why, again, the school is the battleground for ideologies. The secular school has become this really sacred thing. Coincidentally, it's become very sacred to have the secular school, because that secular society, which is very normal in modern Western democracies, is not natural. It's very natural for every human to inquire about the absolute truth. The great continental French philosopher René Descartes made many stunning and beautiful arguments for God. And one of them he calls the trademark argument, that just like someone manufactures a product and then puts their name on it, puts their logo somewhere, somewhere within the design of the manufactured products, so similarly God, who has created everyone, has put his own trademark upon every living entity so that they naturally inquire about their own source. And there's not a human in the world in any time in history who has not inquired about the nature of God, about what is their ultimate source. So Descartes said in this way, he called this the trademark argument. And so the sort of secular society that's engineered in modern Western democracies right now is not a natural thing. It's not natural to encourage someone to not inquire about absolute truths and to just have relative truths, the relative truth of whatever the majority of people has voted to be truth. That's not natural. Nor is it consistent with our history. Actually, it's a very new experiment, and its results, it's got its pros and cons, but it's got these mixed results. It's very natural for everyone, especially children, at any point when they start thinking critically about anything, to start inquiring, what is the absolute truth? What is the ultimate? And to start inquiring philosophically about the nature of God. I mean, I see it all the time, because for some reason my house is party central for our neighborhood. I don't know what happened, but all the kids that come to our house to play and make their terrible messes, and all the neighborhood kids come. And of course, it's all Catholics and Christians in our neighborhood. And, I might just be in the other room doing something. And I hear all these kids talking about God all the time. I'm talking about my 4-year-old, my 7-year-old, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids all in my living room. And they're always talking about God and preaching to each other. It's really remarkable. Because our next door neighbors, the kids go to Catholic school, and they're a very nice family. And then across the street, there's this remarkable missionary family. They're all very fired up. Somehow we're all getting along up until this point. I'm not getting into the differences in religious sects, but just the natural inclination for children to inquire about the absolute truth. That's very natural. The secularism, which is sort of necessary in our modern societies, is an unnatural one, and it needs to be trained in children. Hence the sacredness of the secular public school. So, why did I go off on this tangent? Anyway, in conclusion, let's be like Prahlad Maharaj and be great devotees of Lord Krishna, and not be like the naive, atheistic demon like Hiranyakashipu. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. I think that's all I have to say about that. Are there any comments from our dear devotees in this digital Sangha? Or questions if you're really feeling risque? No? If everyone's fully satisfied. Oh, Dasya Prem. Oh, I guess Nagari Krishna is quick to unmute. Dasya Prem can go next.
No, that's a friend Prabhu can go.
Dasya Prem Prabhu, you want to say something?
Thank you for that. Just in regard, seeing separation. What am I trying to say? Sorry, this echo.
Is the echo caused by me? I'll mute myself. Sorry.
Is it by you? Okay. Yeah, it's better. Okay, thank you. So as devotees, we come from very diverse backgrounds, and so naturally, like there are some differences in maybe political outlooks and just like philosophy on even like diet and medicine and all that. So, and even like these biases even bleed into our outlook on our philosophy. So how do we like how do we get along, or not get along, but cooperate with devotees, considering that there are these different biases and perspectives?
Thank you for that question, Supreme. Of course, every devotee has an answer to that question. But I guess since I'm in the Vyasa-san for today, I get to share my answer. And that is that we should relish the differences in our beautiful ISKCON community. I think that we have a variety of devotees from many backgrounds, with many perspectives, more conservative and liberal, and more who are into the outreach or the inreach. I think that that's our strength, and I think it's a wonderful asset. I think the alternative is a fantasy, a sort of utopia where everybody's exactly the same and everybody gets along and everyone walks in step. I think that's a fantasy and a dangerous one. It's never happened. It probably never will happen. I think one of my favorite things about ISKCON is just how much variety is there, which is from what I understand, symptomatic of the spiritual world as well. There's so much variety of the devotees and how they want to serve Krishna, and disagreement about what is best for Krishna. And I think that whenever we see any conflict amongst devotees, we should recognize that actually both parties are right because both parties want to serve Krishna. And so it's a beautiful thing to witness when you have the ultra-liberal types and the ultra-conservative types debating in the public forum about we should do it like this or we should do it like this. Both have a strong desire to please Krishna, and so both of them are right. Gurudev said this. He said conflict resolution amongst devotees is difficult because in almost all cases, both parties are right because they want to please Krishna. So that's my perspective at this point in my spiritual journey, that I think is wonderful, that there are so many devotees who have different ways of doing things and that we can continue to discuss it and even debate it. I think that's an expression of love for Krishna because we all want to please Krishna as much as we can. There you go. There's some politics from Bhakti Yashadev. Obviously, everybody else has an opinion and an answer to your question, but that's mine for today. And we have to move along because there's some other digital hands up. Would you like to say something, Nagari Krishna Prabhu, or would you like to defer to...
Haribo Prabhu. Are there other questions?
There's a hand raised from Yashoda Devi. It's probably Hari Chakra Prabhu. He's usually...
Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Please, Hari Chakra Prabhu, if it's you, we would love to hear from you. Haribol Prabhu.
Can you
Let me
hear
mute
me?
myself again so we don't have echo.
Can you hear me? Haribo?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you for the class. And during your deliberation, you were making mention about the existence of small Hiranyakashipus, and how everybody is thinking that they want to what do we call it? Train their case in their own way. Meanwhile, they refuse to understand how the kids also have their own free will to decide on certain things. So my question is, a little bit in line with what Dasha Prabhu was saying. Because I just want to use myself as an example. My dad was a Muslim, and when I started practicing Krishna consciousness, even though I was a fully grown guy, but my dad was so mad at me that he even told some of his friends that if Muslims are permitted for them to use their children as sacrifices, he would have used me as a sacrifice. At that time, when I wanted to be a Hare Krishna, I thought my dad was just being demonic. But now, I don't see him like that. Now, I really appreciate how he wanted me to follow his path. Because now I begin to feel that, wow, this man was thinking that I'm going astray, and he wanted to put me on the right path. So the question I'm asking is, each and every person, wherever the person belongs to, when they are trying to train their kids, they try to train their kids, maybe thinking that they want to give the best to their kids. So how do we reconcile that with sometimes when devotees, we feel like, oh, this guy is not interested, he doesn't want to be a devotee, this is my kid, I'm trying to train the kid to be a devotee and he doesn't want to be a devotee, and this is the power of Maya and all these things. So can you give a little bit of what we call insight about issues of this caliber?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, you would know better than me. You have so many nice children who are very Krishna conscious. But first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about that relationship with your father. It's remarkable how much it echoes the story of Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu. Hare Krishna. These are real stories. But as for children and their retention, I mean, we have to honor the free will of all living entities. Even Krishna does that. He honors our free will, and he very patiently waits for us to turn back to him. And he's the father of all of us, you know. So what to speak of us with our children? We have to honor their free will. We cannot force anyone to be devotees. We should take encouragement, though, that the highest retention rate of children into their parents' religion is among Hindus. And I guess for the sake of the statistics, we can put ourselves in that category right now. I just read this in an interesting article in Pew Research. 99%. It's the highest retention rate. That kids just stick with it their whole life because, Krishna consciousness is fun. But ultimately, we have to respect everyone's free will, even our own children, which is very difficult for parents because in our beginning years, of course, we have to be their authority. We have to make all the decisions for them. We have to be their executor. But then at some point, which is not at any particular point, we never really know when it happens, but at some point they become independent. We have to respect that. And I think if we've always treated children just like a new bhakta, if the home is like a bhakta program, then that impression will be there. And we've seen so many times that children of devotees, even if they go away for some time, they'll always remember just how wonderful it was to be, in the kirtan and to have prasadam and to have those festivals and to be in the association of loving devotees. And they always come back, almost always. Always have some level of devotion still there. I've seen in New Zealand some disciples of Srila Prabhupada and their children. One kid was really deep in Maya for like 30 years. And then as an adult, 30-something years old, maybe 39 years old, he finally came back and just got 100%. He's like, now I realize what they were talking about. This is Maya, and this is the bhakti that I want. So it might be like that. There's no magic wand, of course. We can't force anyone to do anything. But I think that, generally speaking, if our home is like a bhakta program, just always giving encouragement and support to children, then that impression will be deep in their heart. And it will fructify at some point. And that's the best we can do. Hare Krishna. But again, you know better than me, Prabhu. your family is just so wonderful. The dynasty, not just the family, the whole dynasty. So I hope that a little bit satisfies your.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, you want to take us home? Literally and figuratively.
No, you will take us home for with your Vimana of a preaching program here at State College. Could you mute?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, Prabhu. Yeah, I really appreciate the angle you took, and I actually had no idea that this battle is a very old one, the battle for the children and their minds. Yeah, so thank you for illustrating it. So my question is around getting cliff notes on Anarita Nivritti. Yeah, specifically overcoming this hate, desire and hate, Icha Dvesha Samitena, seeing falling into camps. One thing I've observed with myself is that when there's friction in the Achyuta Gotra, Krishna's family, amongst the society of devotees, it can become a little challenging to the feedback loop I've observed is that I'll reveal my mind in confidence to some other devotee and asking them to, keep it on the DL. But this is the issue I'm encountering with this other devotee. And then, yes, even though that provides relief, but then because I'm still in an art and a vritti, I can fall into this loop of actually desire and hate, seeing this devotee. And then it's like, and then that devotee can be like, oh, I also had a problem with that same devotee. And then, like, that becomes the subject matter. So it's like you're not gossiping, but you also don't want to escalate the devotee to, your guru. But you just want to, have like some kind of confidential outlet where you can just reveal your mind in confidence. So, yeah, as practitioners, how do we not let the different ways of advancing in Krishna consciousness to be flipped on their head by this tamisra, this ignorance? Lord Brahma, he describes, that he created 5 layers of ignorance, and one of them is this tamisra, anger towards the Supreme Lord as the enjoyer. And so you can see that this, he is my friend, he is my enemy, it's related to this tamisra. So as a practitioner still in an art and a vritti, how do we avoid this ignorance covering our devotional service or covering loving exchanges, such as revealing one's mind and confidence to cope with friction in the Achyuta Gotra?
So you're talking about when we have some issue with devotees. I think that it's important to reveal one's mind and to be able to express if there's some sort of frustration in the heart and to tell someone in confidence. I think that we should just do it once. And if we continue to do it again and again and again, then it becomes an indulgence, which is just going to turn into anger, right? Dhyayato vishayam pungsa sangasteshu bhajayate sangat sanjayate kama krodha vijayate. And then Krishna goes on. Krodha samoham vibram. I can't remember the next verse, actually. It's just going to become an indulgence, which leads to more anger. And I think of it like if you were to express your frustration about an interaction with a devotee to Gurudev, do you think he would listen to it twice? He would listen once, right? Because I've done it many times. And he would listen once. I remember one time I was complaining about some problem in Sydney in Australia and with a senior devotee, and he said, well, this devotee apologized, and so you should take it as that and try to work together. And then I saw him again some 6 months later, and I was kind of complaining about the same thing. I could see he just did not want to hear it a second time. He's like, and I guess what I learned from that is I had the chance to express it. The frustration was there, and I confided in confidence. And so from that point, it's on me to try to resolve it. not to just indulge in saying it again and again and again. I think that's where the anger comes from, and then eventually the Vaishnava aparad. And I've seen this many times, where devotees, they, yes, confide in confidence first and say something about some other devotee. But then if they just continue to do it, it starts to become, just like very easy, very natural to just always complain about this devotee and always say something negative about other devotees until you're just making offenses across the whole board. And then gone, just out of the association. So I think if we really need to get something off our chest and confide in someone, we should do it once. And then it's upon us to start doing something about it, to really change our perspective or to interact with that devotee in a different way. I don't think there's any scripture that says that just complaining again and again and again is going to resolve conflicts in relationships. That's my personal technical advice. Just, it is important to confide and to share so that we don't just, cultivate some misunderstanding which leads to even more anger and offensiveness. But we should also not indulge in saying the same thing over and over again. That's not resolution, that's indulgence. So that's my only practical advice, what little experience I have, is that if I do need to complain about something or someone, I try to just do it once and then just leave it. It's like, all right, I don't want to make a habit of it. I don't know if that even addressed your concern, but I think it's just
it does.
it's a good protocol. Yeah. I recommend the protocol. If we do too much, it just becomes second nature. Always just saying something about some devotee until you're gone. I know you don't want that, and we don't want that. I think Tarika Prabhu has some insight, of course. If you would like to share, Tarika Prabhu, please. And then we should wrap up.
I have no insights. I just have lots of opinions and a compulsion to express them. I like your points. You make some good points. The need we have to express our issues, our frustrations to another individual is important, and it can be valuable when it's done in a regulated way. But as you say, unregulated indulgence in this kind of a thing is destructive. It doesn't result in any kind of resolution. It just reinforces a mentality that ultimately results in offenses, and so it's dangerous. There is, for example, a tendency oftentimes for an individual to try to rally others. When perhaps I'm having a problem with some other individual, I may look for support from others rather than trying to actually find some way to resolve the differences. We try to win others to our camp. We start to look for others who have a similar mindset. This individual is a problem this way and that way, and let's get together and we'll all rag on him conjointly. It becomes very offensive. It's a dangerous thing. It will spoil all of your progress in Krishna consciousness. So it has to be strictly avoided. When there are differences with devotees, particularly in instances in which it involves management, there is a system that Srila Prabhupada put in place, and it's valuable to understand how that works. Generally, the principle is you don't criticize, you don't find fault, you don't backbite, and but sometimes there are real problems that need to be addressed. Sometimes you may have someone in the managerial hierarchy of a particular temple who is um, behaving badly or out of line or could improve significantly. Perhaps, doing something that is adversely affecting the devotees at large, and maybe is not even aware of how he's affecting people. The system that Srila Prabhupada recommended to us, and this was something that Devamrita Swami would know about this. We learned this back in, I was around 1974 in New York. We had a temple president who was also the GBC, and he went off the rails in a serious way. Sometimes devotees think they have problems. They haven't. They have not seen problems. This was serious. This was really serious. He had been a sannyasi. He somehow or other wound up marrying some woman who was pretending to be the daughter of the president of the Toyota company, and it was all a scam. But he thought that because there was potentially an avenue for significant revenue, that it might be good to cultivate this woman through a marital relationship. He married this woman, and she was a great problem element. Now, personally, I did not have a lot of trouble with her. She was actually very kind to me, and 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 my family as well. My parents. It was by her mercy that my parents got numerous times the prasad directly from Srila Prabhupada's plate. But she was monstrous in her dealings with other devotees. It was very bad, really bad, incredibly abusive, uh, um, and um, and then it got worse than that. She was ordering food from outside, particularly Chinese food and sometimes other things, but meat, not non-vegetarian foods. And then there were some stories that it was being offered to the deities. I don't have personally any experience of that, but the remnants were distributed as Mahaprasad. And after the fact, I realized that I had been eating meat and not recognizing what it was, because I just trusted the devotees, and I trusted that everything was what it should be. I marveled at the fact that there was some subject which contained what appeared to be chicken, but surely it wasn't chicken. And then I had what appeared to be a shrimp roll, and I I was amazed at how the cooks had managed to duplicate both the texture and appearance of actual shrimp. I thought that was amazing. And then there were sometimes strips of pork or beef, and some of the Chinese food. And anyway, so everyone was eating this stuff. And anyway, there were a lot of abuses, problems with money. These two individuals wound up taking a lot of funds for their personal sense gratification, watching TV all night in the temple, and meat eating in the temple. It was quite bad. So, and the devotees at the time were generally in ignorance of what was going on, and And they had very high regards for this individual who was both temple president and GBC, had been a sannyasi, and the devotees had developed an attitude that he was so advanced that practically he was transcendental to anything, and it didn't matter what he did. Somehow or other, the culture was that these people were completely above all criticism. And anyone who dared to speak out was immediately expelled, just thrown out bodily. Anyway, it was the problem was eventually resolved by Srila Prabhupada, but he put in place a system that when there is a problem, you think you see a problem somehow or other, the first step is that you approach the individual directly and you try to resolve it at that level. And if you don't get satisfaction at that level, then you go to the next higher authority, who might be so, for example, you might start with the temple president. If you don't get satisfaction there, next step is the GBC and so on. Maybe ultimately the GBC executive or whomever. So Srila Prabhupada wanted us to try to resolve issues at the lowest level possible, and then gradually move up from there when that did not work. And at that time, the ultimate authority, of course, was Srila Prabhupada, and his preference was that we not bother him so that he'd have his time for translating. But sometimes issues came up, and we had no choice but to consult with him. But he tried to encourage us to resolve things ourselves. I know that Devamrita Swami also has this attitude that we should try to resolve issues ourselves as far as possible, that is part of the process of advancing in Krishna consciousness, that you learn how to deal with other individuals, how to resolve problems. It's part of the process of maturation. Unavoidably will encounter all kinds of issues in the course of our day-to-day Krishna consciousness, and living in a society of devotees, interacting with many devotees of all different types, very diverse personalities and interests, and things happen. There are differences sometimes. We have to learn how to deal with that in the best way possible, without becoming offensive, without escalating the problems. Somehow or other, try to tone down the differences and find common ground somehow or other. And sometimes it's helpful just to express to an individual how they are making you feel, rather than being accusative, accusing them, you're this, you're that, you're like this, you're doing this and that. Sometimes the advice is that you just explain, when you do this or that, I feel like this. I feel in this way or that way, and I'm unhappy about that. Is there some way we can do better? Can we resolve this somehow or other? Talking things through is the process. Generally, in every case, open lines of communication are what's required to resolve issues. It's not an easy thing. Gradually, we become more proficient at these things, but I can tell you that even devotees who have been active devotees for many decades still struggle with these things. It's a part of human life, and we have to try to deal with it the least destructive way possible, completely non-destructive if possible. That can be done if we become very expert, and we have to become expert. Just like, we have to cultivate a taste for hearing and chanting. We have to become experts at hearing and chanting the holy names. And we have to become expert at associating with devotees and cooperating in devotional service. Cooperation is key. Srila Prabhupada begged for this. He begged for our cooperation. We, from day one, we always had issues amongst ourselves. Srila Prabhupada's disciples oftentimes did not get along particularly well. There were all kinds of differences between us, but for Srila Prabhupada's sake, we tried to cooperate, to put aside our differences and do what was in Srila Prabhupada's interest. That mentality alone made it possible uh, to get past many significant hurdles. With all our differences, we were unified by the common goal of pleasing Srila Prabhupada, and that's a solution, and that solution is still available to us now. We can still adopt that kind of mentality. It enables us to get past significant differences. We can become unified by a common cause. The common cause is devotional service, and it can be specific. It can be, for the pleasure of guru, a particular guru, or our founder, Acharya, your local deities, or Krishna at large, whatever works for you. But that has always been ultimately the solution. And as I say, apart from that, things have to be talked out. Sometimes you can't resolve things at the most local level, and you have to go higher, and there just is no alternative. In the case of our problem in New York, it had to actually go to Srila Prabhupada to be resolved. Somehow or other, it was never resolved at a more local level. But that's what Srila Prabhupada wanted. As far as possible, we try to resolve things as close to the source as possible. As far as cooperation, Srila Prabhupada was very pleased with the fact that the devotees in New York, in spite of terrible abuses and injustices, the devotees continued to be cooperative. They continued to do their service. They didn't refuse to cooperate. They didn't argue. They just they buckled under and cooperated with their authorities, and things went on, even though there were some terrible problems. And should have devotees had questions about what happens in a case like this when your authority is completely off the rails and maybe engaging you in ways that are not really proper. Do we still get spiritual credit for that, or are we just wasting our time? And Srila Prabhupada's response to this sort of question was that that yes, he is pleased by our cooperation, and that's your success. The specific service may or may not be authorized by him, but the mere fact that you are continuing to endeavor to serve in a cooperative spirit is a great success which you will absolutely get credit for because you're pleasing your spiritual master and the founder Acharya. But he also said that it is the duty of the senior-most devotees to be vigilant. And when they see that something is not right, they have to take action and make sure that it's corrected. They have to protect the rest of the devotees. He explained that for the rank and file devotees, especially younger devotees, it should not be their position to make judgments about their authorities. They shouldn't do it, and they shouldn't have to do it. It's not healthy for them. It will hurt them. It won't help them, but they shouldn't have to do it. It should be taken care of by more senior devotees who are knowledgeable enough to understand when something is not right and what needs to be done. And so there needs to be a system of a means for devotees to communicate their concerns to someone more senior to determine whether or not, is there a real problem here that needs to be addressed, or is, Bhakta so-and-so just going through the, growing pains of being a young devotee and just, being troubled by some envy. Maybe there's something real, and maybe it needs attention. So there has to be a system, and I think throughout ISKCON and most of our temples, we do have systems in place. Even here, we have arrangements. There are individuals who can be approached. There's a management team here at Gita Nagari, and they especially are. It's part of their responsibility to deal with matters like this. I make myself available as well. I assure absolute confidentiality. Nothing that is said to me will ever be shared with anyone, not even your spiritual master. And if there's a real problem, I am duty bound to try to resolve it. Anyway, those are some things I thought I should express. Because there are real concerns that devotees have from time to time, and it's important that they feel as though there is a means to deal with these things, to address issues when they arise. Sometimes there are real problems. Sometimes in management, things may be off. Sometimes mistakes are made. But sometimes it's more than just mistakes. Sometimes there are chronic issues that need to be resolved somehow or other, and it's difficult for rank and file devotees to deal with these things. Sometimes they need the support of more senior devotees, and so they should they should approach someone for guidance and help when something comes up. It can all be resolved to everyone's satisfaction, but it requires that everyone take the appropriate action. Anyway, I've dragged us way past time. I apologize, but it's important stuff. Thank you again, Prabhu, for a very nice class. I always enjoy your classes. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Your concern for the devotees' well-being is always felt, and we appreciate it. And you're certainly not dragging on. We need to hear it all the time. You need to hear it every day. So we really appreciate you reiterating valuable points about how to resolve conflicts, how to express them through the appropriate forums. And I echo your sentiment that we should have a little sympathy for managers and leaders, especially since I've inadvertently become a tiny such one. that it's very hard to keep everybody happy. And so I agree that we should defer to sympathy for the managers and leaders, even if it doesn't always look perfect, even if they're not always making us happy. Should try our best to be supportive. Thank you, Tarika. We're really getting on in time, but I wonder if Leela Kishori Mataji still wants to say something, or are we a little too late now? Don't want to cut you off. Oh, servants
Krishna.
of the playful young girl. Haribol Mataji.
Haribol. Thank you for your class. I was just thinking about what a precious resource children are. And there's it's probably universal. I'm American, so I've heard in America that children will rarely do what you tell them to do, but they will never fail to do what they see you do. And so how important it is that we live our bhakti and that we are examples to our children. And then the question that Agari Krishna asked, I thought about growing up that when, if I went to my mother and wanted to say my sister's crazy and she would say, I don't really want to hear anything bad about your sister, but what's going on with you? And it kind of taught me, and it's a really good practice, I think, that yes, you can give someone a little bit of the detail, but talk about yourself. Keep the focus on you. I'm angry because I'm feeling offended because, and bring that to that other devotee, because it then shines the light on what's really happening. I can't. So this is a Christian saying, I'm not going to quote unquote get to heaven by confessing somebody else's sins. I have to look at me, and that's what needs to change. And that's what I need to bring to the Lord, is like, change me and let me see what's going on. And it doesn't mean that someone might not step on my toes, but I also need to figure out if I stuck my foot in front of them. And if not, and then I thought too about in the Christian church. So Jesus had, everybody knows 12 major disciples, and that's pretty much who he was managing. Like, he was talking to a bunch of people, but he was managing pretty much 12 other people. By the time he was gone and the church was growing, the apostles were managing hundreds of people from different cultures. It was just like a madhouse. And the apostle Paul kind of came up with a formula. He said, well, you go to the person and you tell them exactly what we're talking about, how you feel. This happened and I felt crushed. I felt like you didn't see me. I felt like whatever you did. I felt that's how I felt. And if they are receptive, well, then it's dealt with at that level and forgiveness happens and you move forward. If not, you go to another senior devotee, but you ask them to come with you to that person in the spirit of trying to resolve the conflict. Not just getting it off my chest, not just pointing a finger, but can we find a way? Because we're brothers, we're sisters, we need to get along. If they still won't hear you, then you go to the council of elders and you come back together with other devotees, again, in the spirit of love and service. Can we resolve this? Generally, by that time, it does get resolved. Because again, it's the motive. Yes, I need to get it off my chest, but am I coming in a way that says, but I also want this resolved in a way where we can all move forward in Krishna consciousness and in fulfilling Srila Prabhupada's mission. So I know for myself that with our spiritual master, when I've been upset about something in my personal life or whatever, basically his response has usually been, okay, so that's the way it is in a village, but now what do we do about you? And and I think that if I keep it that way, it tends to help me to grow and help the conflict to be resolved. So you're a dad and you have 2 children, and I'm sure you can identify with this. My youngest child once ran to me and said that his sister hit him back. And it was, he said, oh, Lynn hit me back. And it was like, where do we start here? Yes, exactly. So it's like, quite often too, if you are the senior person, the elder person, it's listening again with the ear. And even if you're a peer, listening with the ear to resolve it and to help the person see themselves in it and see what will help ease their heart so that they can then go back into the situation in a way that hopefully does bring resolution. So that's really all I have. And thank you again for this class. And it also just made me realize, like, what an amazing devotee was Prahlad Maharaj. Because what he saw, I mean, if he did what he saw, he'd have been the ultimate demon. But, you know, the love of Krishna changed his heart so much that he was able to see that and try as a child to change the parent. And that's huge. So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for sharing your wisdom, such sage advice, born of your experience and your devotion. We really appreciate that. As it said, Vaishnav poetry should end on a sweet note, and Leela Kishori Mataji has given us some sweetness, which I think is our cue to end, since we're way over time. And today's a day for partying. Those who are in the area, we're going to come over to Hari Chakra Prabhu's house for a big Thanksgiving party. I've been fasting for a long time, just getting ready, just preparing my guts to indulge with all the devotees. So we'll see you all soon. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for being wonderful devotees. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.